Explaining my depression to my mom. A conversation. Mom, my depression is like a shapeshifter. One day it is as small as a firefly in the palm of a bear. Next day it's the bear. On those days I play dead until the bear leaves me alone. I love Jesus. And I have anxiety. I love Jesus and I go to therapy. I love Jesus and I take antidepressants. Years ago, I would have never said those things publicly. The shame was too thick. And the fear of what people might have said quickly overpowered my need to be honest. With others or myself. I guess if you've grown up in faith or have grown up in the Christian community, my guess is you've probably heard phrases like, oh, you just need to pray more. That's a spiritual issue. You just need to give it to God. I grew up in that conservative Christian faith where if you were having a mental health issue, it wasn't a mental health issue because it always came back to it being a spiritual issue. According to the National Alliance of Mental Illness, over 1 in 5 adults in the United States, or 43.8 million, experience mental illness within a given year. Many of these people have turned to fellow believers or churches during times of mental struggle. Unfortunately, while we are in the middle of a mental health crisis, many Christian churches have chose to continue to stigmatize mental illness, leaving believers to feel shamed, blamed, and very unsupported. So through the articles by USA Today, Naomi, excerpts from the podcast Trauma Talk, and the poetry Explaining My Depression to My Mother, a Conversation by SB, Mental Health Ministry, a program. Because let me be the first one to say that you are not too broken to feel the never-ending love of God. When you tell a teenager or her mother that she just needs to have faith or needs to pray more when she is suffering from symptoms of an illness that she can't control and knows no idea how to manage, those words are like pouring blistering coals on an already blistered soul. Instead of pulling her towards the love of God, it pushes her away, and simply as a matter of the fact, it's just not true. The presence of an illness does not mean a lack of faith, whether it's an illness based in the body or it's based in the brain. Most people were extremely against any kind of medical intervention if you were having a mental health issue. It wasn't a mental health issue. It was an issue of faith. So if you were dealing with depression or anxiety, you were given Bible verses. I call the bad days the dark days. Mom says, try lighting candles. But Mom, when I see a candle, I see a flash of a church, a flicker of a flame that sparks a memory younger than noon, and that is when I'm standing over her open casket, and that is the moment I learn every person I ever have known will someday die, and besides, Mom, I'm not afraid of the dark. Perhaps that's part of the issue. It was essentially treated like you were having a failing of faith. Now, not by everyone, but by most people. And it was like the main message. And you started becoming like entranced in this charismatic Christian community. And it became even worse if you were having mental health issues. They thought you were having issues like being possessed by a demon and stuff. Mental health conditions carry a lot of stigma in our society. But that stigma and shame often is brought greater within faith communities. Mental health is such a taboo subject. The lot of stigma and misconceptions around mental health largely stemming from a lack of knowledge or a lack of experience with mental illness in general, leaving individuals and families who are dealing with mental health issues to feel very unsupported. Mom says, I thought the problem is that you can't get out of bed. I can't. Anxiety holds me hostage inside of my house, inside of my head. Mom says, where did anxiety come from? Anxiety is like the cousin that's visiting out of town that depression felt obligated to invite to the party. Mom, I am the party, and I'm the only person at the party that I don't want to be at. Mom says, try to go to actual parties. Go see your friends. Sure, I make plans, but I don't want to go. Sure, I make plans, and I know there would have been a time where I would have wanted to go. And I make plans, but I know there should have been a time where I would have wanted to go. But it's just not having fun when you don't want to have fun, Mom. You see, Mom, each night, insomnia sweeps me up into his arms and gets me into the light of the kitchen. Insomnia has this beautiful way of making the moon feel like the perfect company. The brain is an organ that is prone to dysfunction as the heart or the kidney. Would you tell someone with kidney disease that they just need to have more faith to heal? Would you tell someone with diabetes to stop taking their insulin and they just need to have more faith? Or someone with cancer, would you tell them that they have sin in their life that they need to deal with and then God will make them better? Do you not see how ridiculous that sounds? You are not failing as a Christian because you are looking for other answers that aren't just God. I fully believe God has given us many tools. He knows we struggle, right? He knows who we are as his people. I'm guessing if you've grown up in faith, you believe that God knows his people. And he knows what we're dealing with. And he wants us to get better. So if you are not okay, I encourage you to get help. Do not think that your only answer has to be prayer and scripture. Because the world is so much bigger than that. God made a world so much bigger than that. God knows the world is so much bigger than that. Do I believe God can heal all sorts of illnesses and diseases? Absolutely, he can. And he does. But sometimes struggles continues, and sometimes suffering endures, and sometimes pains linger, and sometimes hard things don't go away, and we may ask ourselves, did God hear me? Do I not have enough faith? Why won't he bring me healing? Where is my miracle? And sometimes when we don't get the answer we want, we always get the one we need. Because sometimes the answer that we need is just simply the presence of God himself. Years after everything that has happened and having a lot of time to think about faith and mental health, I've come to the realization if you're struggling with anxiety, depression, PTSD, bipolar disorder, or fill in the blank mental health disorder, it is not because your faith is not strong enough. I feel like I could shout that from the rooftops because it's so true. It is not because your faith is not strong enough. It is not because you have not prayed hard enough. It is not because you have not read enough scripture. It is because there are things chemically wrong with our bodies, and that's okay. We can't control it. We are not at fault for what we can't control. Mom says try counting sheep, but I can only count of reasons to stay awake. So I go for walks, but stuttering kneecaps clink like silver spoons held on with strong arms and loose wrists, clinging like clumsy church bells in my ears, reminding me that I am sleepwalking on an ocean of happiness that I cannot baptize myself in. Mom says happy is a decision. My happy is as hollow as a pin-pricked egg. My happy is a high fever that will not break. Mom says you are so good at making something out of nothing, and then flat out asks me if I'm afraid of dying. No, Mom. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of living.